college is an achievement that is becoming increasingly important for many of you. For Bob Anderson, the task of getting into college has been completed. He's now arriving on campus to begin his first year. Just what did Bob do to gain admission to the college of his choice? He would tell you that he followed two simple rules. First, plan early. Second, get expert counsel. To see how these two rules helped Bob, let's go back a couple of years to Bob's junior year in high school. In his junior year, Bob was already making plans for college. In fact, he'd been thinking about college for some time before this. Some of Bob's friends, like Ken, thought that college was still a long way off. But Bob realized that planning takes time. Along with planning early, Bob also sought counsel from an expert, Mr. Henderson. Like counselors in many other high schools, Mr. Henderson had a great deal of information and knowledge about college requirements. He knew that each student had different qualifications and goals. Mr. Henderson helped these students to select and gain admission to colleges that would best fit their individual needs. Bob was one of the students Mr. Henderson had talked to on a number of occasions.
Bob, you've been keeping your grades up. That's good. The last time you and I talked about college, you were interested in science and social studies. Have you been doing any more thinking about this?
Well, I'm still not sure. I've been doing pretty well in biology, but I like history and I like government. It sure is hard to decide.
That's right. That's one reason for having counselors. Bob, your strong interest in both biological science and social science indicates that a liberal arts program is for you. That would give you a good background, and then later you could specialize in one of a number of fields in either biological science or social science. But first, you'll want to discuss it with your parents. And for now then, let's be sure that your program is set up right so that you can get into a good liberal arts college.
Mr. Henderson helped Bob choose the courses for his senior year. For example, he made sure Bob would continue with his fourth year of English, generally a liberal arts requirement, as well as courses in science, a foreign language, and social studies. After arranging the program, Mr. Henderson discussed school enrollments and finances with Bob, important considerations in the choice of any college. Then Mr. Henderson introduced him to the college catalogs. He selected some of those put out by liberal arts colleges for Bob to look at. Listed in each catalog were the courses offered by that college. Each catalog also contained specific information about admission requirements. Of course, there were other points to consider. A small school or a large one. A private school or a state university. There were many decisions to be made. Decisions that would take a lot of thought. When he got home, Bob showed the catalogs to his parents. As they had done many times before, Mom and Dad discussed his plans with him. A big consideration was family finances. Bob's father had an average income, but he too had planned early, and he was managing to set aside some money toward his son's education. Bob was also contributing with money he earned working part-time. After school and on Saturdays, he worked in a supermarket. During summer vacations, he held another job as a junior counselor at a day camp. This job provided not only money, but good experience in organizing activities and in getting along with people. By the time Bob was ready to begin his senior year in high school, he had selected several colleges in which he was particularly interested. He arranged to visit one college with his parents. At the college administration building, they got information about the campus. Then they continued their tour. The library was one of the places Bob wanted to see. They also stopped by a few of the classrooms and laboratories and talked to members of the teaching staff. Then they looked at the living facilities on campus. First on their list was the student dining hall. In the cafeteria, there was a good selection of food at a cost that seemed quite reasonable. Later, Bob and his father were taken on a tour of the dormitories. Bob talked to the students and got more impressions of what college life would be like. Finally, he went to see the college admissions counselor, again seeking expert counsel. He also talked with the financial aid counselor. From him, Bob learned about the possibility of getting a scholarship and a part-time job to help him with his college expenses. When the tour was over, Bob had a much better understanding of what this college had to offer. Later, he visited other colleges. So by the start of his senior year in high school, Bob was well prepared for the final steps involved in gaining admission to college. He took the final courses that would qualify him for a liberal arts college and worked hard to get good grades. Later, he took the various tests required by most colleges for admission. He had found out which tests were required and when to take them. Then, once again, Bob went to see Mr. Henderson to get help in filling out his applications. Bob applied to 3 colleges where he felt his needs would best be met and where he felt he had the best chance for admission. Several months later, Bob received his replies. He was very pleased with the results. All 3 of the colleges had accepted him, and 2 had offered him financial aid. His friend Ken was glad to hear the news. Ken also had news, but it wasn't good. He had applied to several colleges, but they had all turned him down. Bob was disappointed to hear this. Ken was a good student. What had gone wrong? Well, let's see. We need go back only a few months to find out. Ken had waited until his senior year before taking active steps to get into college. He'd always hoped to study engineering. Mr. Henderson had helped him lay out his high school program. But Ken had not made use of Mr. Henderson's counsel for getting into college. His parents were very interested in his education and were eager to give their help. However, while they wanted to be helpful, they did not have enough information and experience to guide Ken in making realistic plans. They were acquainted with only a few of the largest and most widely known schools. Later, when Ken filled out his applications for admission, he applied for financial assistance, hoping this would cover most of the cost of his education. However, if he had checked with a counselor, he would have learned that financial aid generally goes to those students who really need the help and who make an effort to help themselves. During the summer, though, Ken made little effort to find a job. He did not have a very realistic plan for financing his education. After listening to Ken's experience, Bob suggested that he see Mr. Henderson right away. The next day, Ken took Bob's advice. Mr. Henderson was pleased to see Ken. He had been concerned about him. He told Ken that he might have been more helpful if Ken had made use of his counsel earlier. Yet, there was still a chance of his getting into college. Mr. Henderson explained that he would send Ken's application to a college admission center. A college admission center is a place where representatives from many colleges go to look for promising candidates who may not have contacted them directly. This is where Ken's application was sent. In the days that followed, during the final semester of Ken's senior year in high school, he hopefully checked the mail. No letters from any of the colleges. When graduation time came, Ken's chances were beginning to look pretty slim. One day after graduation, when Ken had just about given up hope, letters came from several colleges, and later, one of these granted him admission. So today, Ken is also arriving at college. This school has a good engineering department. Financially, it is within Ken's means, and in many other ways, it is well suited to Ken's requirements. Ken was very lucky to be able to complete his last-minute arrangements. Of course, Bob did not rely on luck. He followed a much surer procedure for getting into college. A procedure based on two rather simple but basic rules. These rules can be of help to you as you make your plans for college. Plan early and get expert counsel.